Hey YouTube, so the day has come. Or maybe a better way to say it, it already came yesterday, mostly. The Pi testnet is gone. Long live the Pi mainnet. Congratulations to the Pi core team in completing something monumental. Our very first steps, even though it's beginning baby steps, of Pi's mainnet. In today's video, right here, from yours truly, Wes Spencer, to you, my friends, we're going to cover all of the details that we know so far and what's going right, and maybe even a few critiques, because I like to be honest about what's happening in the Pi network. You don't want to miss this. A whole bunch more, and I mean it, a whole bunch more coming right up. All right, my friends, Wes Spencer here with you guys again. Thank you so much for joining. In today's video, we're going to cover all of the updates around Pi's mainnet. If you don't know, it hit live yesterday, which was Tuesday the 28th, was it, I think? And if you can't tell it in my voice, I'm struggling from a sinus infection, and it's really terrible. So I'm really hoping I will be with it mentally and with clarity, and you get my Darth Vader voice for today. Now, if you don't know who I am, and I sound normal to you because you don't normally listen to me, and Google sent you to me, well, hey there, I'm Wes Spencer. I'm a technologist. I do cover a lot of cybersecurity and cryptocurrency and starting and building your own companies. I am big into all of that stuff, and I'm really glad you stopped by. For all of you guys, would you hit like and subscribe, and please share this with your friends. It'll go a really long way for my channel. I really do mean that. I know we all say it, but it does make a difference. Okay, a couple other things before we get started. First of all, you guys will see down below, I have been doing this for the past couple of weeks. I'm going to keep it open. I used to live in Kentucky. I actually worked in Mayfield, Kentucky, and you guys saw the storms that came through a couple of weeks ago and completely devastated Mayfield, Kentucky, among others. I actually have a charity drive that I have given to, and I'm inviting you guys in my community to give to. So down below is a donate button. I'd love for you to do that, whether it's $1, $10, $1,000, whatever it is. I'm raising for that, and I'd love to see my community to reach out, not on behalf of Wes Spencer, but on behalf of all of us, for the folks in Mayfield who have been displaced, who have lost their homes, some have lost loved ones. I'd love for you to consider giving. So down below is Caravan of Hope. I'd love to see you do that. Second thing I want to talk about, and this is a big one. I can't cover all of the updates in today's video. So I'm going to cover the highlights today. But tomorrow, which is Thursday, make sure the day is right, the 30th, I had to look at my notes there. Yes, I sometimes have notes. Tomorrow, Thursday the 30th at 3 p.m. Eastern Time, I'm going to do a live stream. And that live stream is going to cover a little bit more around the market cap. We're going to look at some comparative cryptocurrencies that are out there that are similar to the mechanics of Pi, and start to understand what this whole release will look like. Now, one thing I don't do, if there's been one question you guys have asked me over and over and over again, it's been this: what's Pi going to be worth? I know you want to know that. I want to know that. Nobody has the answer to that. It is pure speculation at this point. And if there's one thing that I steer clear of in this channel, I don't want to be like all those other YouTube influencers that are out there that are constantly doing price speculation. Because the truth is, none of us actually know what anything is going to be worth, or any truth about crypto. We don't. So don't listen to YouTubers like me. I'm not your financial advisor. So I just wanted to make sure I covered both of those things. Number one, make sure you check out the charity below. Number two, I'm doing a live stream tomorrow at 3 p.m. Thursday the 30th. I want to see you there. It's going to be awesome. I'm going to cover the market cap. I'm going to answer questions, all that. We're splitting this into two. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump in. And let's talk about some of the major things that are happening. So the first thing that's happening, I'm going to look off screen a little bit as I kind of consult my notes through all of this. I'm just going to blame sickness for all of that, right? So you forgive me for that. So one of the things that we've talked about is the core team has never said up until now what the total supply of Pi is going to be. And I think it's fair that they have never said that. They've looked at it and they've just told us with transparency in the white paper, we don't know what it is. We're still in testnet. We're still growing the network. We're not sure. Once we get closer to mainnet, then we'll see how much pi has been mined, and we'll have a better understanding of like what it'll be, and we can ascertain a better number. And I think that's smart. I mean, I've seen a bunch of people on Reddit and other places that are like calling, hundreds of billions of pi that have already been mined. And I'm kind of like, guys, I just don't think the numbers support that. But none of us had an answer, so I just steered clear of it. Well, we now have a lot of data. I'm going to cover some of that data that the Pi team has shared in all of the notes to the updated white paper. You can go read all of this yourself. Just log into the app and click read more, and you'll see everything that I'm going to talk about. I'm just going to distill a lot of the news for you in a better way for you to just kind of digest it in a more comprehensible way. So first of all, 100 million engaged pioneers is going to be the next step for the next halving event. So they talked about like Pi, just like Bitcoin has these halvenings where the amount of Pi that you mine, it goes lower and lower and lower. And I think that's a smart thing. As we introduce more supply, we need to introduce that at smaller amounts. And I think that's the right way to go. We want to make sure that there's still Pi being introduced into the ecosystem, which is called inflation, so that we can attract more users. Currently, we're about 30 million active users in Pi, and that's incredible. There are probably not 20 cryptos out there, maybe even less than that have 30 million active engaged users by whatever metric you want to use. So that's extremely rare and extremely valuable for the Pi ecosystem. And one of the main reasons I've been so invested in Pi is to see how many people worldwide have gotten into it. But the next halving event is going to be 100 million users. So we're going to have to go from 30 million to 100 million. I think the numbers are going to continue to rocket ship up, especially as we hit MainNet. But we have a long way to go before we hit 100 million. Probably many months to go. So we learned some things about all of that, right? So we learned that there's 30 million users currently, but we didn't know the total supply of Pi, like I just mentioned. The Pi core team has just said, we don't know the data yet until we get closer to MainNet. Well, now that we're here with MainNet, we know the answer. I'm going to read from you what they said. They said this: given the current network size of over 30 million pioneers and the expected volume of transactions and activities in the future, the MainNet supply model has a clear maximum total supply of, are you listening? 100 billion. That's the number. So we've always wondered, what is the number going to be? It is 100 billion Pi. Okay, so now we have something to work on. Now we have something that gives us a ton of information about market cap, comparing this crypto to others. And so if you want to know more about all of that, you need to come to tomorrow's live stream, and I'm going to share more about it. I'm going to unpack that more for you with some examples. I'm not going to totally price speculate because I don't do that, but I'm going to give you some frameworks, and I'm going to distill away some of the numbers that are way off on both sides of the spectrum. Is Pi going to be worth $100, $1,000? Is Pi going to be worth 0.0000001 pennies? What is it going to be? I'm going to throw away a lot of that, and we're going to come to a middle ground on what I think is probably correct. Not exactly correct. I'm not speculating. I'm just giving you some ranges that science would support based on history of other cryptos. And then you can make your own decisions from there. So we'll do that. But I will say we now know the max supply. And when we talk in crypto terms, there's like when you look at supplies, like if you go to CoinMarketCap, for example, and pull up any crypto, you're going to see what the current total supply is, how many are in circulation, and what the max supply is. And so with Pi, the max supply is 100 billion. The total current supply is way less than that. So that's the first thing the white paper goes through, is to help us understand the next halvening is going to be wild. It's going to be 100 million users, and the current total, not the current, but the total supply is going to be 100 billion. Now, I will unpack more of that as we go on in this video, but for now, let's just pause on that. The next thing that the core team does is they talk about distributions. They talk about how this is going to be split up. Now, from the very beginning, the core team has been very clear that of all the rewards, of all the total Pi supply, which we now know is 100 billion, 80% of that goes to the community, 20% of that goes to the core team. But it's a lot more complex than that, and we've needed more data on what all that's going to look like, and we now have that in the white paper. I'm going to share more about that. Because the numbers are 100 billion, we can actually kind of understand this easy. 80 billion go to the community, 20 billion go to the core team. So let's start in the community, the 80 billion or the 80% first, and understand what all of that is going to look like and what it's going to make up for all of us. Let's kind of understand the mechanics of all this. First of all, let me address a question that many of you probably have. You're probably thinking, wait, so the core team has 20 billion? How is that fair? Right? How does that make any sense? Well, there's a lot of things to think about here. First of all, let me say this. They're not off. If you look at what like a lot of larger crypto projects have, you typically see a core team reserve of somewhere between 10 and 20%. Sometimes a little lower, in some cases a little bit higher, but usually it's in that 10, 15, 20%. So they're within margin of where it should be. Nothing wrong with that. Secondly, keep in mind this. You would not be here today, and I would not be sharing this video if it weren't for not the core team. The core team, they came from Stanford. They could be doing a lot of other things. Instead, they're building relentlessly and tirelessly. They're building the Pi ecosystem. They've given up a lot of benefit of working a 8 to 5 bank job, making good money to go do this. They've taken a lot of risk. I have this up here, sink the ships. I don't talk about this a whole lot, but eventually I will, about taking risk and what taking risk means. See, I know this because I'm an entrepreneur. I've built and sold companies before, and I know how much risk you have to take on to do that. And the Pi core team is doing that. So I understand where the 20 billion is coming from. More on that in just a bit. But also know this. They don't have 20 billion right away. Just like the 80 billion, the 80% that goes to the community, it's not all come through yet. We're still waiting for the entire supply to be generated. And in the white paper, they even tell us how much has been generated so far, which I'll get to that in just a minute. But I just wanted to clear up some questions that you probably have right out of the gate of why do they get 20%? And do they already have 20 billion? They don't have 20 billion yet. They get their pie as we get our pie. It's fair. We both are in these steps together. It all happens simultaneously and with each other. Okay, so now that I've said all that, let's kind of dive in more to what the 80% of the community, what the makeup is. So 65% of that goes to, and we're just going to say like 65 billion, right, is the number. 65 billion of that it goes into the mining rewards. What you and I are earning right now. When you log in every day and you push the button and the Pi ecosystem calls that mining, or you're carving out and earning that by clicking the button, that's mining rewards. And so of the 80%, 65% of that goes to you and me as mining rewards. What about the rest of it? Well, 10% of it goes to supporting the larger Pi ecosystem. And I'll talk about that more in just a bit, but just know that that is coming, and that 10% is going to be the future of how we build this whole thing. And I'll talk about what that means more in just a minute, but that's the Pi Foundation. And then lastly, 5% goes into a liquidity pool, which isn't really well described yet, but more detail will come. If you don't know what a liquidity pool is, think of it as, so first of all, liquidity is some amount of capital that I set aside to be able to use for transactions and purchasing and selling. It's because it's liquid, right? It's liquidity. And so that 5% liquidity pool is set aside just to allow, once Pi ecosystems come off the ground, I'm assuming they're going to use that to fund a lot of it. Not like give Pi apps free Pi, but to put Pi into the ecosystem so there can be buying and selling and trading, right? You have to start somewhere, and there has to be some amount of reserves set aside to build all of that, and that's what that 5% is. So of the community, let's recap that. 80% of all Pi goes to the community, 65% of that is mining rewards, 10% goes to the Pi Foundation, and 5% goes to the liquidity pool. And that's kind of how all that works. Okay, so let's get back into how much has already been mined. So I think that's a pertinent thing we need to talk about. And fortunately, the white paper gives us some insights that we've never had before, and there's some good data inside this. So we know 65% goes to you and me as mining rewards, but how much has already been mined, right? Like if we're already at like 50 billion out of the 65 billion, then the total supply has already been eaten up and there's not a lot left over. Well, that's not the case. There's been, again, a lot of speculation of how much Pi has already been mined. And again, if you go on Reddit, especially if you look in the past year, you're going to see wild speculation. I mean, I've even seen YouTube videos come out from people that, say they're accountants or say they're like someone that is in the know, and they try to use all this Excel wizardry to show, and the numbers were embarrassingly bad. And Look, let's be honest, if I had given you just guesses, mine would be embarrassingly bad as well. So I'm not hating on anybody. I'm just saying it's all guesswork. So let's not guess. Let's just wait until we have better data. And now we have better data. So the white paper says that 30 billion have already been mined by all the pioneers that are out there in the ecosystem, out of all of the, the 80 billion that is reserved for the community. So that's kind of a lot. But here's something interesting. They say if you take account of all the fake and duplicate accounts that will be removed, that'll either be removed by the core team because they're known to be fraudulent or they'll never pass KYC, they're thinking that number is somewhere between 10 and 20 billion. So let's just cut that in half and call it 15 billion. So only 15 billion have actually been legitimately mined in the ecosystem. We still have 10s, 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s of billions of pi left to be mined. That's good. That's not bad. That's good. That means there's still a big green space. There's a lot of leftover room for continued growth in the ecosystem, and I want to see that happen for a really long time. If you're familiar with Bitcoin, when Satoshi came out with his halving rewards, I'm not going to look it up now. I could go look it up, but it's somewhere like the year 2100 before Bitcoin finally mines its last Bitcoin. Like Satoshi, if they're even alive at this point, won't be alive by then. I won't be alive by the time the last Bitcoin is mined. And the reason for that is the half-life gets smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. And I want to see Pi do the same thing. I want to see it have a continued growth mechanism for decades. That's my view, so that people are always incentivized to jump in. Imagine ourselves 5, 6, 7 years from now, and you say to a friend, you should join this Pi thing. Well, why? What do I get out of it? Well, you can use it to buy and sell things. Well, cool. There's a lot of other things I can do with it. Yeah, but on your phone, you can actually mine it as a reward. You can still make it right off your phone. And they're like, oh, that's cool. I've always wanted to get into crypto. It's not going to be a lot, you tell them, but it's still some, and it'll be that way for a long time. That's an incentivization that invites more people into the ecosystem. The more people are in Pi, the better off we all are. So I love that. I want to see that continue really long. So we haven't really heard from the core team with their equations how long that will be, but I hope it's not months. I hope it's not years. I actually hope it's decades. I'd love to see that entire, close to whatever it is, 60 billion leftover Pi, or remaining Pi is the better way to say it. I'd love to see that continue to drip out over decades. That's my view, and I think that'd be a positive thing. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is talk about the Pi Foundation. So remember, 10% of the community or 10 billion is a better way to say it, has been allocated for the Pi Foundation. Well, what is that? So if they mention many things that the Pi Foundation will be. First of all, they say it's going to be a nonprofit. I'd love to see it be a DAO, a DAO. Now, we haven't really talked about DAOs much on this channel. At some point, I'll cover it in more specifics. If you don't know much about DAOs, just go look it up. It's a way to sort of handle and democratize some amount of governance for a project. So I'd love to see that happen. But the core team has told us what the Pi Foundation will be involved in: sponsoring and organizing events, organizing volunteer and community members that will just help the community grow. It's also going to sponsor and fund a full-time team to build the ecosystem, and they're going to need that. The Pi core team will need lots of developers working on the node, working on software for scalability and upgrades and enhancements. All of the innovations having in crypto, Pi needs to stay around and stay on the wave with all that. It needs to stay up to date. And so that it'll fund all that with a core team that's expanded to be able to continue to build these things. They'll work with and solicit ideas from people like me and you and the entire community to make things better, to allow for voting. It'll have brand building and marketing endeavors, which I think is great, and I'd love to see them do more of that, and collaborate and work with third parties, governments, banks, all the good stuff. So the Pi Foundation will be the centerpiece for all that. And we've seen examples of this before. You look at what Ethereum is doing, and there's many others. I mean, shoot, Solana, Stellar, there's a whole bunch of crypto projects. Even Bitcoin has a foundation. So the Pi Foundation will be very similar to all of those. So 10% goes to that. The next thing I wanted to talk about that's inside of all of this is the base mining rate. The core team gave us some more information around all of that we also have not had much information on prior, or maybe not enough. So I want to talk about some of these things today. Now, first of all, they share all of their formulas. I'm going to skip by that because it's pretty mathematical and kind of outside the scope for my audience and for today's video, but I'm glad that they published the formulas because you can go and look at them yourself and get a better understanding of how they all work for you. But I do want to say just a few things first. So first of all, when you mine, a lot of things stay the same. One of the things that stays the same is the way you mine in testnet and in mainnet is the same way. When you check in, you're going to earn some pi that happens. That's going to continue to happen. And that comes from yourself, your security circle, and your referral awards. So that's going to continue to stay in place. Even after mainnet, you can still invite more people into pi, and you're going to make additional pi based upon how many people you invite. That's still there because we need the viral kind of growth mechanism in place to get to 100 million plus users. So that's going to stay. But secondly, there's going to be some new ways to earn pi that you haven't had before. And I want to cover some of those. The first is nodes. I've talked about nodes a little bit in some of my earlier videos. Nodes right now have just been for testing purposes, and actually right now they're still for testing purposes. While we're in the enclosed mainnet, there's no way for you to build a node and have it sync to the actual Pi mainnet yet. We're gonna have to wait until the full mainnet is released, the open mainnet, and when that happens, then you can actually spin up your own node. A node is responsible for keeping its own copy of the blockchain and handling the way that the consensus algorithm works to do all of its transmission checking and make the blockchain work the way it's supposed to work. And so you can spin up your own node, and those that choose to do it will have the ability to earn extra Pi based on that. I think that's brilliant. One of the things that Bitcoin, for example, doesn't provide any incentives for is node people that host a node. I can go build my own Bitcoin node very easily, but I get no rewards for it. You just have to do it because you want to do it. And I don't think that's wrong. I just think there should be more incentivization. And so Pi is doing that. So you running a node, if you choose to, you'll be able to earn extra Pi. I think that's great. The other way to earn a lot more is through Pi lockups. And we've talked about lockups already. Basically, you take your Pi and you say, I'm not going to use it. I'm going to lock it up with the community. The Pi group is a cell, as you know, the whole community it's locked up and reserved. One thing I haven't heard from is if it's reserved like a bank would reserve it, are they using it for other purposes and then I get it back later at higher amounts? I don't know what happens when I actually lock it up. So for example, you guys know I'm a huge fan of Celsius. Down below, I have a Celsius referral link. Check it out. If you want to store crypto with them and make a ton of extra money, I make thousands of dollars a month with Celsius just by storing it with them. Isn't that awesome? And yours will vary based upon how much you store with them. But the reason they're giving me extra crypto back is because Celsius uses what I give them to make money on top of it. And I'm not going to cover how they do that in today's video. Just check out my Celsius reviews if you want to see more about it. But I want to know, is the core team doing the same thing? When I lock my Pi up, what happens with it being locked up? I'm not sure the answer to that. But we do know you can lock up your Pi for a certain amount of time and you'll earn back, your reward rate goes higher. You earn more Pi. Many of you have asked me what I'm going to do, so I'm still not sure yet. But I will tell you this, I'm leaning towards locking up at least half of my Pi for 1 year. I think 3 years is too long for me. 1 year is a good number, and I don't want to lock it all up because I want to have some of it to use, to actually do transactions with and test and use things. It's the whole point of Pi. So I'm definitely not going to lock it all up, and I think 3 years is too long. I'm comfortable with half of my Pi for a year, but we'll see how that pans out. If my metrics change, I'll let you know. But that's another way you can earn Pi is lockups, right? The third thing, and I'm not going to talk a ton about this, but it was introduced into the white paper just recently, is the app usage rewards. And so this is a way that the core team has sort of developed to incentivize people to use Pi. They know that Pi is new, it's burgeoning, it's young, and there's zero users in it right now because we just got into mainnet. And no transactions are happening in mainnet yet. And so because of that, they know they need to incentivize. And so they've come out with this app usage reward that they talk about that basically says this: the more you're active in the Pi ecosystem, the more you use our apps, there's some reward that will incentivize you. I don't have enough information yet on how that's going to look. I wouldn't imagine it's some major amount of Pi that you're going to earn, but it's nice to know you're going to be incentivized based on your usage. It's kind of like the Brave browser. If you've seen that before, the more you use Brave, you get their token, which is the basic, I think it's called basic authentication token, BAT. It's a similar mechanism to that. So check that out. I'm interested to see kind of what happens. I think it's smart to incentivize people to use the Pi ecosystem. So there's that there as well. The next thing we need to talk about is updates to KYC. There's some big things here and a lot of misunderstandings. I want to clear some of that up because I think it's important for you to understand the facts of what's happening. And there's some big pieces to all of this. So let's just kind of start one point at a time. So one of the things I talked about is the rolling 6-month period to complete KYC. So that may scare you. And if that does scare you, that's a good thing, because the core team wants to create a sense of urgency to make sure that when KYC is available, that everyone's like, oh yeah, I got to do it. And it's not going to be unfair. It's not like you got 30 days and that's it. You will have 6 months, half of a year to complete KYC. Now it's not out yet. We're still waiting. Part of the enclosed mainnet is getting ready for KYC. Open mainnet is when that trigger will begin, and you'll have 6 months. So I want to talk about this. If during that 6-month period, you go through KYC and you complete everything, then all of your past mining and current mining will be rewarded to you. And that's great. And same with all your referral awards for the people you've invited. You might have a lot in that. You'll have to wait until they get done with KYC, and then you'll earn your pieces that have already been assigned to you when they complete their KYC for each of them. So it's going to be a waiting game, and that's okay. But there's a couple things you got to know about this. If you miss your 6-month period, that rolling window, it's not that you'll never be able to do KYC ever again. Hear me on that. I think there's some misunderstanding there. So there is a rolling 6-month period. If you don't get it done, there will be a punishment, which I'll explain in just a second, but you'll always be able to do it. Let's say you just went off the grid for a year and came back to it. You could still go through KYC and earn some pie. Okay, so I want to make sure everyone knows that. But here's what happens. We call it a rolling 6-month period because here's the deal. When the KYC period starts, when open mainnet starts, you're going to have those 6 months. And if you fail to go through KYC, any pie that you have earned prior to that 6-month window starting, you'll lose forever. It's gone. But anything within the 6-month rolling period, whenever you do your KYC, you'll earn. So let me just throw some numbers out there to make that make it a bit more sense. Let's say you have 1,000 KYC or 1,000 pie that you've mined, and you miss the 6-month rolling window. You wait 7 months. Then you've lost all of that 1,000 that you previously mined. But let's say you've mined 200 during that 6-month period. Well, that you'll keep that, but you'll lose everything else before the 6-month period. I hope that makes sense. So that's the sense of urgency. That's the creation to have to cause you to say, when KYC happens, I need to get on the ball and do it. But you have 6 months. If you're 5 months and 28 days and you get it done, you're fine. Everything you earned before, everything in the 6-month period, you're good. If you miss the 6 months, then everything you've mined to the 6-month marker and back that you've met will be gone forever. So just keep that in mind. All right, so one more thing I wanted to show you is this right here. I wanted you to see the actual mainnet in action so you can kind of see what it all looks like. And sorry for this flickering. It looks like it's bugging out my mirror software that I'm using, but it'll still be fine for the video. So I have the Pi browser open. If you haven't downloaded this, just go to your App Store or Play Store and search Pi browser. This is like the second app that they have. And I'm going to click on wallet.pi, this right here. Now, never click on this unlock with passphrase and then put in your actual passphrase, especially if you're like showing this on video like I am, because all your Pi will be stolen by somebody. So don't do that. I'm just going to unlock with Face ID and bring this up. And here is the difference. Here is testnet, which we've had for a while. I've already covered this in other videos. Your testnet is filled with test Pi. It's fake Pi. It'll go away, very soon. I still have 100. It's not real. But then here's mainnet. So this is now showing up. And I can see right now my wallet balance is 0. Don't panic. Everybody is 0. Even though mainnet has occurred and it's alive and it's here and it shows up, it is completely, everyone is at a 0 level right now. So eventually this will get funded once you go through KYC, and it will grow as people in your referral teams go through KYC as well. Up here is my actual wallet. I can tap on it and you see where it said copied right there. I can send that to people. That's actually my wallet address, not my private, but my public one. In other words, if someone wants to send me Pi, I can give them that safely. I can put this on my YouTube channel and say, here's my address if you want to send me Pi. In fact, I'll do that. I'll just put it in the description down below so you can see mine, and you can share that with anybody and they can send Pi to you. You can hit receive, and this is actually the same thing that I just showed you. So there is the exact public key. So I can share that with anyone. I can copy it, which I already did. So you see all of that. And then the other piece I wanted to show is you can send Pi as well once this comes up. So you would pop in the recipient address. Now, of course, apps will do this for you behind the scenes once these come out, but this is just showing you how a wallet can send and receive as well. So the address, the amount, the fee, which will go to the node holders, and off you go. Pretty simple to have all of that done. Now, one thing that's not working, I think for me, it times out as history. So they'd probably be waiting for this to be fully released before we have this work. But I've tried this a couple times. It just says loading and it never works. So no big deal on that. And also we have settings. There's not much here. There's Face ID and show my passphrase. Again, I would never want to click on that on a YouTube channel. But there you are. That is for all of us, the actual mainnet. There's not much to show at this point in time, but that's just the wallet and how it works. So you can kind of see it and play with it. And then of course, as mainnet is fully released and fully developed, you're going to have access to your Pi, KYC will come out, and you can actually use it for transactions, which is really, really cool. Okay, lastly, 2 critiques that I have, 2 negatives. Overall, I'm super excited. I mean, congrats to the Pi core team. This is a huge thing. People said this would never happen. They proved the haters wrong. And that's part of innovating. You always have to deal with haters and people that will bash on whatever you're doing because they think they don't see it the way you see it. And you just innovate. You just continue to tear through that pathway. You sink the ships and you continue on until you're successful. And congrats to the core team because they're on that pathway. Are they successful yet? No, but we're getting there. So 2 critiques I have. First of all, I don't have a problem with the core team having 20% of the supply. As I said before, it's within the metrics. 10 to 20% is the metrics. They're on the top end of that, but they still fall in line. I'm okay with that. But I think 2 things should be adjusted that I would love to see happen. First of all, I understand that the Pi Foundation has to be funded from somewhere, but my view is maybe we should split that. So it's 10%, maybe 5% should come from the core team, and 5% should come from the community. That seems to be fair to me. They don't have to do that, and it looks like from the white paper they've decided not to do that, but I do think that's a fair number given that the core team is extremely small and 20% goes a really long way to fund them and all of their endeavors. I just think a 50-50 split would be a better way to go than taking the entire 10% from the community to run the foundation. So I'd love to see them make that change. We'll see what they choose to do. It's not a huge deal, but I'd love to see that happen. The second thing my critique would be is I'd like to see more transparency from the core team on how the Pi core, the 20% that they have, how it will be used. I'd love to see maybe a DAO manage some of that. They've given us a few pieces of information so far on exactly what the core team reserves will be used for, but I'd like to see more information around that, more transparency to that. They have actually published the address that will be managed so we can track that and see it. But I think a little bit more documentation and some control around all of that will continue to help. Because one of the things that'll come up that people will say is, well, once the core team gets, all of their Pi that's reserved for them, you're talking 20 billion total, theoretically, they could rug pull and just sell and be out forever. I don't think that'll happen. I think there's no way that'll happen. The core team has been too invested so far. They're too public. This thing is going too well. They would actually hurt themselves in the long run by doing that. There's no chance that'll happen, but I think it'd be smart to have some transparency in place just so we can all see where that's going and how it's to be used. But I don't have any problems with 20%. I think that's a fair number. They're the ones that took the risk. They're the ones that have spent the midnight hours building this community, taking all the pain, punishment, toil to get there, and they've done a great job doing it. So there you have it. Finally, core team, congratulations. And this is my review of everything that you need to know from the white paper that just got released for all of the updates. But remember, tomorrow, 12:30, December 30th at 3 p.m. Eastern, we're going to do a live stream. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about market caps. We're going to compare Pi to some others. I'm going to answer some questions for you and give you some frameworks of what I think what this will all look like as we get closer and closer to open mainnet. Hey, I hope this has been helpful. I would love for you to leave a comment. Let me know what you think. Share this with a friend, hit like, hit subscribe. It goes a really long way. Thank you guys so very much.